The map of Africa glows beneath a rising sun. Borders begin to fade, rivers stretch freely across nations, and golden light connects the continent from Cairo to Cape Town. The drums begin to rise. What if Africa became one? Not in speeches or slogans, but in real power. One currency, one market, one dream. For centuries, Africa has been divided not by its people, but by lines drawn in rooms far from its soil. Lines that cut through villages, rivers, and families. Lines that turned brothers into strangers and neighbors into competitors. Yet beneath those borders, one truth has always remained. Africa is rich, united in soul, and destined to rise. Imagine if the gold of Ghana fueled factories in Nigeria, if the oil of Angola powered trains in Kenya, if the diamonds of Botswana funded schools in Mali. Imagine if the minds of millions of young Africans created one unstoppable engine of innovation. This is not a fantasy. It is the dream our ancestors carried through centuries of struggle. From the kingdoms of Mali to the vision of Kwame Nkrumah, from the freedom chants of South Africa to the resilience of the Sahel, Africa has always been more powerful together than apart. Today, a new generation is waking up to that truth. From Ouagadougou to Nairobi, from Accra to Johannesburg, voices are rising again. They are not asking for permission. They are demanding unity. They are demanding an Africa that stands tall, trades freely, and dreams beyond borders. What if we stopped competing for crumbs and started sharing the feast? What if our currencies, our markets, and our people moved as one? The answer could change the destiny of 1.4 billion Africans and reshape the balance of the world itself. The question is no longer if Africa can unite. It is when. And that moment might be closer than we think. In 1963, in the heart of Addis Ababa, Africa gathered to dream together. The air was filled with hope, courage, and determination. That day, Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, stood before the newly formed Organization of African Unity and declared words that still echo today. We must unite now or perish. His message was clear. Africa could either control its destiny or remain controlled by others. Nkrumah envisioned a single Africa, a powerful union where borders would no longer divide brothers and sisters. He imagined one flag, one army, one currency, and one future built by African hands. He called it the United States of Africa. At that moment, many believed it was possible. The winds of independence were sweeping across the continent. Dozens of nations had just broken free from colonial rule. Hope was alive. But hope alone was not enough. The colonial powers that once ruled Africa never truly left. They simply changed their methods. Where once they used guns and armies, they now used debts and trade agreements. Instead of direct rule, they created dependency. They ensured that African economies would remain small, fragmented, and easy to control. Today, the scars of that division remain. Africa is a continent of 54 nations, each with its own currency, laws, and economic systems. There are 8 major regional trade zones that often compete with each other instead of working together. A truck leaving Burkina Faso for Ghana can spend more time waiting at the border than it does traveling the entire distance. Goods produced in Africa are often sent to Europe for processing, then sold back to Africans at triple the price. Yet even within this web of division, a spark of unity has survived. It can be seen in the creation of the African Union, the successor of Nkrumah's dream. It can be felt in the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA, which is now the largest trade agreement in the world. Covering over 1.4 billion people and a combined GDP of more than $3 trillion, it represents Africa's first true step toward economic unity. The AfCFTA is more than a document. It is a statement of intent. It says that Africa will trade with Africa first. It says that a continent once treated as a supplier of raw materials can become a center of industry, innovation, and ideas. It says that Africans can build for themselves. Still, challenges remain. The legacy of colonial borders, foreign influence, and unequal infrastructure keeps trade difficult. Roads that connect capital cities are often broken. Railways built during colonial times were designed to carry resources to ports, not to link African economies. Internet access, digital payments, and logistics networks are improving, but still uneven. Despite these barriers, progress is visible. In East Africa, the dream of a shared railway and open trade is becoming real. In West Africa, the discussion of a single currency continues, inspired by the determination of nations that want to escape foreign control. In the South, the Southern African Development Community has already created systems that allow free movement of goods and people. What is happening is not a revolution in a single day, but a quiet awakening. Each small step is building something greater. Each trade agreement, each border reform, each youth-led startup is part of a grand design that is slowly coming together. When we look at history, we see that unity has always been Africa's strength. The empires of Mali, Songhai, and Great Zimbabwe were not built by isolation. They thrived through cooperation and shared vision. Their markets were connected, their cultures intertwined, their progress collective. That is the model the modern continent seeks to revive, and yet this time, Africa has something it never had before: technology. Digital banking, renewable energy, satellite internet, and mobile innovation are giving Africans the tools to connect faster than any generation before them. For the first time, unity is not just a dream written on paper. It is something that can be coded, built, and powered by African youth. Across the continent, millions of young entrepreneurs are no longer waiting for politicians to unite Africa. They are doing it themselves through apps, fintech, and shared networks. A Nigerian developer can collaborate with a Kenyan designer. A Ghanaian manufacturer can sell directly to a Burkinabe farmer online. The barriers that once required political negotiation are now being dissolved by technology and determination. The Pan-African dream is rising again, this time not from conference rooms, but from classrooms, marketplaces, and computer screens. It carries the same spirit Nkrumah spoke of in 1963, but now it moves with digital speed. The dream of one Africa, united in purpose and prosperity, is no longer a memory from the past. It is the direction of the future. What happens next will depend on whether Africa's leaders can match the energy of its people. The foundation has been laid. The opportunity is enormous. The question now is not whether Africa can unite economically, but whether it will choose to finish what Nkrumah began. The road to unity is never easy. Behind every vision of a united Africa lies a battlefield of interests, debts, and invisible chains. For decades, the idea of integration has been celebrated in speeches, but resisted in action. Powerful nations and corporations have built entire systems designed to keep Africa divided. Across the continent, the same story repeats itself. Trucks carrying goods between African nations sit for days at borders. Bureaucratic papers, tariffs, and taxes choke the flow of trade. In some regions, it is cheaper to import milk from Europe than to buy it from a neighboring African country. A farmer in Mali can lose half his harvest waiting for a customs officer to stamp a paper. Every delay, every unnecessary fee, drains the life from African productivity. The borders that were drawn during colonial times still control the rhythm of African life. They divide languages, resources, and dreams. In many places, people living only a few kilometers apart use different currencies and pay conversion fees just to trade with one another. Imagine a carpenter in Togo trying to buy timber from Ghana. He must first exchange his local currency into euros, then back into cedis, losing value each time. That is not independence. That is a trap disguised as policy. The same trap extends into banking and finance. Many African central banks still keep their reserves in European institutions. The CFA franc, used in more than 10 countries, remains tied to the euro, a currency controlled in Paris. While African nations work and produce, their money strengthens economies outside their borders. This system was built not for freedom, but for control. It rewards dependence and punishes autonomy. Foreign loans are another chain. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank offer money, but with conditions. In exchange for loans, African countries are told how to structure their budgets, what to privatize, what subsidies to remove. Roads get built, but at the cost of sovereignty. Hospitals open, but only until the next payment is due. When a nation tries to break free from these conditions, it risks economic punishment and political isolation. Many African leaders have tried to challenge this structure and paid a heavy price. Thomas Sankara spoke of self-reliance and was assassinated. Muammar Gaddafi proposed a single African currency backed by gold and was destroyed by war. These examples serve as warnings to others. They remind African politicians that true independence often comes with danger. Even today, the global market resists an Africa that stands on its own. Western corporations control the trade of cocoa, oil, gold, and lithium. They decide prices, control exports, and determine which factories succeed or fail. Africa produces what others consume and imports what it could easily make itself. This imbalance keeps wealth flowing out instead of in. Corruption and internal politics also play their part. Some leaders choose comfort over change, protecting old agreements that benefit a few while millions remain poor. Fear of losing aid, fear of sanctions, and fear of instability become excuses to delay unity. The result is a continent rich in potential, but poor in coordination. The challenge is not only political, but psychological. For too long, Africans have been told they are too different to unite. They are told that English and French speakers cannot cooperate, that North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa belong to different worlds, that tribalism makes unity impossible. These ideas are not natural. They were planted and repeated until they became accepted truths. The goal was simple: keep Africa divided, and the world stays powerful. But the truth is different. Africans trade across borders every day. Markets in Lagos sell goods from Abidjan. Musicians in Dakar collaborate with artists in Nairobi. Students in Addis Ababa discuss politics with friends in Johannesburg. The people are already united in spirit, even if the systems are not. The real tension lies in this contrast between what is possible and what is allowed. The youth of Africa see a world without borders on their phones, but they live in countries where traveling 50 kilometers can require a passport. They can send messages across the continent instantly, but they cannot send money without paying high transfer fees. The potential of unity is visible everywhere, yet trapped behind old systems that refuse to change. At the center of this struggle is a question of power. If Africa unites economically, who loses control? The answer explains why unity is difficult. It is not because Africans are unwilling, but because those who profit from division fear what a united Africa would mean. A single currency, a shared market, and a collective voice would shift global influence forever. The dream of pan-African unity threatens those who built their empires on African weakness. That is why every effort to unite faces resistance. But resistance is not defeat. It is proof that the dream matters. Every obstacle, every barrier, every policy of control is a sign that Africa is pushing against the limits of the old world. And history has shown one truth again and again. No system of control lasts forever when people begin to awaken. Amid the struggles and barriers, a quiet transformation is taking place across Africa. It is not happening through sudden revolutions or loud declarations, but through steady, deliberate action. In boardrooms, workshops, and rural villages, a new spirit is rising. It is the spirit of self-reliance and unity. The same ideals once voiced by the great leaders of independence are now being reimagined by a younger, more determined generation. In West Africa, a new kind of cooperation has begun to take shape. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have started working together to build an integrated financial system that no longer depends on foreign currencies. Their governments are now testing trade in gold and local resources instead of dollars and euros. This partnership is not only symbolic, it is a statement that sovereignty is not just political. It must also be economic. Each transaction conducted in African wealth is a small act of freedom. In East Africa, technology is leading the way. Kenya and Ethiopia are using digital payment platforms that allow trade across borders instantly. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, known as PAPSS, is being adopted to make cross-border transactions faster and cheaper. With this system, a merchant in Uganda can sell goods to Tanzania and receive payment in seconds without converting into US currency. This is not theory. It is already happening, and it is changing the rules of trade. Across the continent, infrastructure is improving in ways that encourage cooperation. New railways connect landlocked countries to ports. Roads linking West African capitals are opening. Power grids are merging to share electricity across regions. In the past, infrastructure was designed to take resources out of Africa. Now it is being redesigned to move goods within Africa. This shift is monumental because it redefines the purpose of development. It focuses on connecting Africans with each other instead of connecting them only to foreign markets. At the same time, the African Union has become more assertive. It is no longer just a platform for speeches, but a growing institution that sets collective goals. Through the Agenda 2063 plan, the AU envisions a single African market, an integrated transportation network, and one digital identity system for all Africans. It may sound ambitious, but so did independence 70 years ago. The first steps are already visible. Tariffs are being reduced. Borders are being simplified. Trade agreements are being enforced with a new level of seriousness. The private sector has joined this movement as well. Young African entrepreneurs are creating companies that operate across multiple countries. Startups in fintech, agriculture, logistics, and energy are bridging the gaps that governments once struggled to fix. A small app developed in Lagos can now be used by farmers in Kigali to access credit or market prices. A renewable energy firm from Accra can expand into Burkina Faso with support from local partners. The digital economy has become the true bridge of Pan-African unity. Education is also transforming. Universities and online academies are offering programs that encourage regional collaboration. Students in different nations work together on shared research projects, from renewable energy to artificial intelligence. These connections are creating an intellectual network that transcends borders. For the first time, a generation is growing up that identifies not only with a nation, but with a continent. Cultural unity is reinforcing this economic awakening. African music, cinema, and fashion are spreading across the continent and the world. Artists are telling stories that celebrate collective identity rather than colonial divisions. Afrobeats, Nollywood, and Pan-African cinema are doing more for unity than many political summits. They remind people that Africa shares a single rhythm of hope and resilience. The diaspora is also becoming an active part of this resolution. Africans abroad are returning home to invest, build, and share knowledge. Across cities like Accra, Nairobi, and Kigali, a wave of young professionals from the United States and Europe are launching projects in technology, real estate, and education. They are reconnecting with their roots and bringing with them new skills and capital. This flow of resources and talent represents one of the most powerful forms of unity possible. Despite the challenges, these changes are proof that the Pan-African dream is no longer an abstract idea. It is visible in business, infrastructure, education, and culture. Each country that joins this movement adds strength to the collective voice of the continent. It is no longer a dream of one leader, but the shared will of millions. As this new Africa takes shape, it sends a message to the world. The continent is no longer waiting for permission to rise. It is building its own path, guided by cooperation rather than competition. The forces that once divided it are losing their power. A new generation is redefining what it means to be African. Independent, united, and proud. The Pan-African dream is no longer a story about what could be. It is a story about what is happening right now. One trade, one innovation, and one connection at a time. The Pan-African dream is no longer limited to the borders of the continent. It is expanding across oceans and generations, carried by millions of Africans and their descendants who now live in the diaspora. From Atlanta to Accra, from London to Lagos, a new bridge is being built between Africa and its global family. The connection that was once broken by history is now being restored through technology, investment, and shared purpose. In recent years, thousands of African Americans and Afro-Caribbeans have begun to return to Africa. Some come seeking identity, others come to invest, and many come simply to belong. They are bringing capital, skills, and fresh ideas into industries like renewable energy, film, technology, and education. In Ghana, programs like the year of return, have opened doors for descendants of the transatlantic slave trade to reconnect with their ancestral lands. What began as cultural tourism has now become a movement of rebuilding and partnership. The potential of this diaspora connection is immense. Studies estimate that the African diaspora controls wealth exceeding $500 billion. If only a fraction of that were invested back into African economies each year, it could transform the continent faster than any foreign loan ever could. It would mean new schools, factories, and innovation centers powered not by charity, but by kinship and vision. This return is not just economic. It is spiritual and emotional. For centuries, Africa was seen as a place people left. Now it is becoming the place where they return. Each project built, each connection made, is a step toward healing the long divide of history. The diaspora is rediscovering Africa, and Africa is rediscovering the diaspora. Together they form a global African nation without borders. The Pan-African dream is not about isolation from the world. It is about partnership on equal terms. It is about using shared history to shape a shared destiny. When Africa unites with its people abroad, it gains not only resources, but global influence. From the music that fills cities to the technology reshaping industries, Africa's power is already spreading. The next revolution will not come from outside. It will come from Africans everywhere, choosing to build together. The dream of a united Africa is no longer a vision for the distant future. It is a call that echoes right now in every African city, every village, and every home where hope still burns. The question is not whether we can unite, but whether we will choose to. Every generation has a moment that defines it. For our ancestors, it was the struggle for independence. For us, it is the struggle for unity. True freedom is not only the absence of colonial rule, but the ability to stand together, to trade together, and to build our own destiny without asking permission. The young people of Africa already understand this truth. They are coding the future, creating new industries, and linking nations through ideas that travel faster than borders can contain. Unity begins with small actions. It starts with supporting African businesses, choosing African products, and valuing African innovation. It means rejecting the belief that progress must come from outside and recognizing that the greatest resource of this continent is its people. Every entrepreneur, teacher, artist, and farmer is part of this transformation. When we support each other, we are not just helping individuals succeed. We are building the foundation of a stronger, freer Africa. Leaders must also rise to the moment. The time for promises has passed. What is needed now are decisions that reflect the will of the people. Policies must connect nations, not divide them. Borders should open to trade, education, and ideas. The unity our ancestors dreamed of will only become real when courage overcomes fear. Africa's story is not one of poverty or struggle. It is a story of endurance, creativity, and unbroken spirit. When Africans unite, they create more than economic strength. They create an identity that the world cannot ignore. The Pan-African dream is a promise to the generations to come. One market, one currency, one destiny. The future of Africa will not be decided in foreign capitals, but in the hands of Africans who dare to believe that together they are unstoppable.